The glow of the Walmart sign pierced the darkness, a beacon of ordinary consumerism that promised the mundane comfort of a late-night shopping trip. Tired, with the mental clutter of yet another day at the office weighing him down, he pushed through the sliding doors, seeking nothing more than the simple relief of ticking items off a grocery list. This was my routine, a brief reprieve from the stresses of life, a moment of calm where the most complex decision was between brands of cereal. As I entered, a chill that had little to do with the air conditioning swept over me. The store was quiet, too quiet, with only the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead for company. The usual late-night crowd seemed conspicuously absent, leaving the aisles eerily deserted. It was then, between the shelves stocked with an abundance of goods that promised satisfaction, that I first saw him, or rather, felt the weight of his gaze. The Watcher, as I'd come to think of him later, stood at the far end of the aisle, a silhouette framed by the harsh, flickering light. Dressed in the standard blue Walmart vest, he appeared to be just another employee. Yet no name tag adorned his chest, and his focus was entirely on me. His eyes, piercingly blue even from a distance, followed my every move, unblinking, unsettlingly intense. I rationalized it away, telling myself he was just doing his job, perhaps keeping an eye out for shoplifters. Yet a small part of me couldn't shake the sense of unease. Shaking off the feeling, I grabbed a cart and ventured deeper into the store, eager to lose myself in the monotony of shopping. But as the minutes passed, the sense of being watched grew, a constant presence at the back of my mind. I turned corners and ducked down aisles, but every time I glanced back, there he was, always at a distance, his gaze never wavering. Then the cart anomalies began. I was sure I'd placed a loaf of bread and a carton of milk in my cart, but when I looked again, they were gone. I retraced my steps, a thread of irritation weaving through my weariness, only to find them back on their respective shelves. Confused, I chalked it up to my distraction, a lapse in memory perhaps, and returned them to my cart. It was as I debated the merits of one brand of coffee over another that the PA system crackled to life. Instead of the usual mundane announcements, what filled the air was a jarring string of gibberish, a language I couldn't place, voices overlapping in a discordant symphony that sent a shiver down my spine. The words, if they could be called that, scratched at the edges of my understanding, familiar yet wholly alien. My heart rate quickened, the air felt thick, and the fluorescent lights above seemed to flicker more aggressively, as if fueled by the unsettling announcement. Alone in the aisle, clutching my cart like a lifeline, the surreal nature of the situation began to truly sink in. The normal, mundane Walmart I'd entered seemed to be peeling away, revealing something far more unnerving beneath. I took a deep breath, attempting to quell the rising tide of fear with a dose of logic. Stress and fatigue, I murmured to myself, a mantra in the face of the unexplainable. Yet, as the last echoes of the PA announcement faded, leaving behind a hollow silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. The line between reality and something far more sinister felt dangerously thin. And all the while, the Watcher's eyes bore into me, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos. As I attempted to recalibrate my sense of normalcy, pouring skepticism over the unsettling occurrences like a balm, I noticed her. Another shopper, seemingly as out of place as I felt amidst the growing strangeness of this Walmart visit. She was middle-aged, her demeanor jittery, movements quick and skittish, as if she too sensed the oppressive atmosphere that had begun to close in around us. Her name, I would later learn in passing, was Jane. Our paths crossed near the frozen foods, an area dimly lit and uncomfortably cold. She glanced over her shoulder at me, and for a moment, her eyes locked with mine, reflecting a shared apprehension. As I drew closer, intending to ask if she had experienced anything odd, she leaned in, her words a hushed, urgent whisper that barely carried over the low hum of the freezers. "Be careful," she cautioned, her gaze darting towards the end of the aisle where the Watcher loomed, an ever-present shadow. "Something's not right." Before I could respond, she was gone, disappearing down another aisle, leaving me with more questions than answers. Her warning resonated within me, amplifying the unease that had settled in my bones. The store, with its endless aisles and towering shelves, now felt like a maze designed to disorient and confuse. I quickened my pace, my heart racing as I sought to find the exit, to escape this sudden nightmare masquerading as mundane reality. But the store had other plans. What should have been straightforward paths twisted into a labyrinthine puzzle. Aisles that should lead me closer to the front now looped back, leading me deeper into the bowels of the store. Panic set in, a primal, suffocating blanket. As the realization dawned, I was lost within a space that defied logic. In this heightened state of desperation, our paths crossed once more. Jane and I, two souls caught in the web of confusion that Walmart had spun around us. She appeared as if from nowhere, a flicker of motion in my peripheral vision before materializing beside me. Her breath came in short, rapid bursts, eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. "The layout, it's changing," she whispered, a statement of fact that chilled me to my core. Together we moved, allies born of circumstance, weaving through the aisles with a shared goal, to find the exit, to reclaim the reality we'd lost. Our efforts were met with frustration and dread as familiar signposts led to unfamiliar places. Every turn, every aisle, a new twist in our disorienting journey. The interconnectedness of our situation, a bond formed in the face of the inexplicable, drove us forward, a fleeting beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Yet as sudden as our alliance had formed, it fractured. A noise, a flash of movement, something indescribable, and Jane was gone, pulled away by the shifting, treacherous landscape of the store, leaving me once more alone. Alone, save for the constant, unnerving presence of the Watcher, who seemed to bear witness to my every move, an enigma wrapped in the mundane uniform of a Walmart employee. With my makeshift ally gone, the store's oppressive atmosphere weighed heavier upon me. Each step forward an act of defiance against the surreal nightmare that had ensnared me. In the grip of despair, the fluorescent-lit labyrinth seemed to tighten around me, an intangible force pressing in with every disoriented step I took. The surreal nature of my plight left me gasping, a feeling of drowning on dry land, with salvation just beyond reach. Yet it was in this nadir of hope that the store yielded, as if my sheer determination had caused it to falter, revealing a path previously obscured. The exit, bathed in the harsh, unnatural light, never looked more inviting. My relief, however, was short-lived, for standing between me and the freedom I so desperately sought was the Watcher. His presence, once an unsettling background anomaly, now took center stage, a final hurdle in this nightmarish ordeal. He regarded me with those piercing blue eyes, a depth of unspeakable knowledge, or was it understanding, lurking within them. Silently, he extended a hand, offering a receipt, an item I had not noticed in my frenzied escape. It was a plain, ordinary slip of paper, yet it felt heavy with significance as I took it from him. His gaze never left mine, a wordless exchange that transcended the mundane interaction. With a nod, he stepped aside, the final guardian of a gate that led back into a world I recognized, but now with eyes wide open to possibilities I wished remained unknown. The cool night air hit me like a wave as I stepped outside, the oppressive atmosphere of the tough store dissolving behind me. The parking lot, empty and silent, was a stark contrast to the chaos I had left. I stood there for a moment, the receipt clutched tightly in my hand, a tangible link to the surreal ordeal I had endured. Turning it over, I found scribbled on the back, in handwriting that seemed oddly familiar, a message that read, "Some truths are best left undiscovered." The words resonated within me, a cryptic farewell that left more questions than answers. The experience inside Walmart, was it a mere product of stress, a trick of the mind spurred by fatigue and isolation? Or had I stumbled upon a sliver of reality, a hidden layer veiled by the ordinary? Days turned to weeks, and life resumed its regular rhythm, a veneer of normalcy that couldn't quite erase the scars left by that night. Driven by a need for closure, I returned to the Walmart during the day. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating aisles filled with shoppers and bustling employees. The Watcher was nowhere to be seen, the store layout familiar and logical, every trace of the night's bizarre events seemingly erased by the light of day. Yet, the memory lingered, a shadow that flickered at the edge of my perception. The receipt, now tucked away in a drawer, served as a reminder of the fine line between reality and the unfathomable depths that lie beyond. My ordeal in Walmart had revealed a darkness, a whisper of the unknown that refused to be silenced. In sharing this story, I leave you with a cautionary note. There are aspects of our world, shadows between the ordinary and the unimaginable, that are best left unexplored. For in seeking out these truths, we may find ourselves facing realities we are not prepared to understand.
Sometimes the most mundane decisions lead you down paths unfathomable, into stories that refuse to leave the crevices of your mind. This tale, my tale, begins on an unremarkable Tuesday evening, driven by the simple need for essentials: a loaf of bread, some milk, the trivialities that root our existence in the ordinary. It was this need that steered me towards the Walmart at the edge of town, under the cloak of night, seeking to avoid the day's bustling chaos, unaware that I was stepping into a silence far more unnerving. The moment I crossed the threshold, a peculiar sensation washed over me, like the world outside had been muffled, replaced by this oppressive silence that clung to my skin. For a space designed to teem with life, the quiet was unsettling. It was as if the store breathed a life of its own, whispering secrets in a language felt rather than heard. I shook off the unease, attributing it to the late hour and my own exhaustion, and grabbed a cart, its screech a startling violation of the silence as I ventured deeper into the store. It wasn't long before I encountered him, an employee, restocking shelves in the toiletries aisle. Something about his demeanor was immediately off-putting. His movements were sluggish, unnaturally so, as if he was resisting a force invisible to my eyes. Every so often, his glance would meet mine, a look so vacant it sent shivers down my spine. Yet, whenever I blinked or momentarily shifted my gaze, he returned to his task, acting as if our eyes had never met. It was an eerie dance of avoidance and acknowledgement that I couldn't make sense of. Determined not to let paranoia get the better of me, I moved on, ticking items off my list with a mechanical focus. However, as I wound my way through the aisles, the store began to play tricks on my senses. Products that I had passed mere moments ago seemed to rearrange themselves when they caught the corner of my eye. Labels on items blurred and twisted into nonsensical symbols, only to snap back into legibility when I blinked. It felt like the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges, and I stood in the epicenter of its unraveling. Then came the whispers. Faint at first, they were easy to dismiss as the remnants of a song stuck in my head, or perhaps the hum of the fluorescent lights above. But as I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine heart of Walmart, they grew louder, more insistent. They spoke of ordinary things: prices, grocery lists, mundane conversations about the weather, but in a tone that turned my stomach, as if each word carried a weight of dread, a feeling of being watched, discussed, analyzed by unseen observers. My resolve waned, my hands clenching the handle of the shopping cart with a white-knuckled grip, as I realized that this late-night shopping trip had turned into a journey through the looking glass, into a world that mirrored reality, but twisted it into something unrecognizable and utterly terrifying. I should have left then. I should have recognized the danger in those distorted aisles and whispered secrets. But like a moth to a flame, curiosity anchored me, driving me deeper into the abyss, towards a mysterious confrontation that promised answers, or perhaps only more questions. In this parallel dimension of whispering shelves and shifting realities, I stumbled upon her, a beacon of normalcy in a sea of madness, a fellow shopper. Her presence was a jolt back to reality, or at least what passed for it within these walls. She seemed just as lost, her bright red hair a stark contrast against the monotone backdrop of Walmart aisles. Our eyes met, and in hers, I recognized the same bewilderment and fear that I felt. "Did you hear it too?" she whispered, her voice cracking slightly, betraying her attempt at composure. I nodded, unable to form words, grateful for the shared madness. If nothing else, her presence assured me I hadn't completely lost my mind. Not yet, anyway. We exchanged brief backgrounds in hushed tones, finding solace in the shared ordeal, despite its strangeness. Her name was lost to me, muffled by the overwhelming din of the whispers that seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as if angered by our budding alliance. Together, we attempted to find a way out, our combined efforts lending courage. The store, however, had other plans. The layout morphed with each turn we took. Familiar aisles transformed into endless corridors of consumer goods that twisted and turned in on themselves. The air grew thick with the whispers now, each word a tangible presence that seemed to hover just over our shoulders, impossible to ignore. It was in this chaos, this cacophony of unseen voices, that he found us again, the peculiar employee. His movements still carried that haunting slow quality, but now there was intent behind his steps. He moved towards us, not with the haste of a worker determined to assist, but with the deliberate pace of a predator stalking its prey. "You see it, don't you?" he murmured as he drew near, his voice a stark contrast to the whispering that filled the store. His eyes locked onto mine, piercing blue that seemed to see right through me, the truth beneath the surface. His words, cryptic and laden with an unknown meaning, sent a new wave of panic through me. It was not his words alone, but the sheer normalcy of his presence amidst the chaos that petrified me. He was not a specter of this twisted reality. He was its gatekeeper, a sentinel guarding secrets too horrifying for the sane mind to comprehend. Before I could muster a response, he was gone, slipping back into the shadowed ambiguity of the store. His sudden departure left a void, a silence that pressed in on us, suffocating in its intensity. The whispers fell silent, and for a moment, the store was just a store. But the respite was fleeting. The whispers returned, now a cacophony that drowned out thought, demanding my attention, pulling me further into the depths of the Walmart. My newfound companion clutched my arm, her grip tight with desperation. We were linked by our shared terror, bound by the unspoken understanding that whatever reality we had known was now held captive by the unfathomable abyss of this place. Our fragile alliance, formed in the crucible of shared fear, propelled us forward, towards an uncertain escape, or perhaps towards a deeper understanding of the nightmare that Walmart had become. The need to escape became paramount, an imperative that pushed every other consideration to the wayside. With each step, the store seemed to resist, its layout an ever-changing maze designed to disorient and confuse. But the desperation lent us a peculiar clarity, a singular focus that cut through the whispers like a knife. We ran, our feet pounding against the linoleum floor, the sound a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had first greeted me. The whispers swirled around us, a storm of voices that seemed to protest our departure, their eerie cadence now a frenzied howl that followed us through the twisting aisles. As we navigated the labyrinth, the store began to reveal its final horror. The shelves started to close in, narrowing our path until we were funneled into an aisle that seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. The products on the shelves leered at us, their labels twisted into grotesque faces that mocked our plight. We were in the heart of the nightmare, the apex of its madness. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pathway cleared. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, revealing the familiar layout of the Walmart exit. The whispers faded into a hushed silence, a reluctant concession from the store's unseen forces. We didn't pause to question this abrupt return to normalcy. The sight of the exit was a siren call that spurred us forward, driving us to escape the suffocating embrace of the store. Bursting through the automatic doors, we were greeted by the cool night air, a balm to our frayed nerves. The parking lot lay before us, bathed in the gentle glow of streetlights, its normalcy a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. We parted ways without words, each of us eager to retreat into the safety of solitude, to process the ordeal in our own way. The drive home was a silent one, my mind a whirlwind of disbelief and lingering terror. The familiar streets seemed alien, tainted by the memory of what I had experienced. The normalcy of my apartment offered no comfort. The walls echoed with the whispers of the store, a haunting reminder of the nightmare I had escaped. In the days that followed, I found myself grappling with the reality of my experience. Was it a shared hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by stress and fatigue? Or had I glimpsed a hidden layer of reality, a dark underbelly of the mundane that few are privy to? The Walmart stands there still, a beacon of normalcy to the unsuspecting shopper. But I know better. Beneath its fluorescent glow lies a darkness, a silent observer of the human condition, waiting to pull another unsuspecting soul into its twisted reality. And so, my tale ends not with answers, but with questions. Questions about the nature of reality, the fabric of sanity, and the thin veil that separates our world from the one that whispers from the shadows. This story, my story, remains an open book, its final chapters unwritten, a testament to the horror that resides in the ordinary, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to be seen.
The evening had draped its inky cloak over the city by the time I decided to make a quick run to Walmart. It was supposed to be uneventful, grab a few necessities, maybe indulge in a late-night snack, and head home. But from the moment I stepped through the automatic sliding doors, a whisper of unease feathered through my consciousness, unsettling in its persistence. The store was quieter than usual, the usual hum of activity muffled, as if the night had seeped in and absorbed every sound. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, gaunt shadows across the linoleum floors, shadows that seemed to play tricks on the eyes. I shook off the feeling, attributing it to the tiredness nipping at the edges of my mind. Grabbing a basket, I ventured into the aisles, the whisper of unease now a murmur. Action Beat 1. Encounter with the unsettling employee. It wasn't long before I noticed him, an employee restocking shelves. Something about him felt off. He moved with a deliberate slowness, as if every can of soup weighed a ton, every box of cereal contained multitudes. His gaze flitted around skittishly, never settling on anything for long. But whenever I glanced his way, he would turn, his back to me, creating an inexplicable tension that wound itself tighter with every non-glimpse. Action Beat 2. The shifting store layout disturbed. I pushed forward, seeking the comfort of familiarity among the aisles. But comfort eluded me, replaced instead by a growing sense of disorientation. Aisle 9, where I had always found cleaning supplies, now hosted an array of electronics. I blinked, disbelieving, retracing my steps only to find that the layout seemed to have subtly shifted. It was a maze, a trick of the mind or perhaps the store, bending in ways that defied logic. Action Beat 3. The silent shoppers. I attempted to brush off the creeping disquiet, attributing the store's oddities to a late-night rearrangement I hadn't been aware of. But the other shoppers, their silence pierced deeper than the oddities around me. A couple, whispering so softly it seemed like they weren't speaking at all, passed by without acknowledging me. A child's laugh echoed from a distant aisle, a sound filled with joy, yet somehow hollow, as if emanating from an empty shell. Each step, each observation, drew the noose of unease tighter. The mundanity of a Walmart trip had spiraled into a journey through the looking glass, where the rules of the world I knew didn't apply. I clutched my basket tighter, a lifeline to normalcy, as I navigated the increasingly foreign landscape. The murmurs of unease now a clamoring dissonance in my mind. Action Beat 4. The whispering woman. As I wandered, half in search of my original items, half driven by a morbid curiosity, I stumbled upon her, the woman who'd later haunt the edges of my thoughts. She stood before the canned goods, her empty basket dangling from one arm, whispering to each can as if they shared a secret language. Her murmurs were too low to decipher, tinged with an urgency that felt deeply personal, yet unsettlingly disjointed. When our eyes met, a flash of recognition, or was it warning, flared within her gaze before she turned back to her silent conversation, dismissing my presence. Action Beat 5. The Lost Child. No sooner had I moved on from the whispering woman than a new disquiet found me. A child, no more than 8, trailed silently behind me. His eyes, wide and unblinking, bore into me with an intensity that belied his years. He wore a simple shirt and shorts, but no shoes, his feet padding softly against the cold floor. The store's eerie silence seemed to fold around him, making his presence all the more ghostly. I stopped, offered a smile, and asked if he was lost, but he merely stared, then, with a blink, darted away between the aisles, disappearing as if he'd never been there at all. Action Beat 6. The unending aisles. The sensation of being watched, the whispering woman, the ghostly child, they compounded into a crescendo of dread that quickened my pace. I aimed for the front of the store, seeking the solace of exit signs and night air. But with each turn, the promise of escape dimmed. Aisles stretched before me in an endless parade, each turn I took seemingly returning me to the same spot. Panic pricked at the edges of my reason. The store had transformed into a labyrinth, one that coiled tighter around me with every step, every breath. The murmur of unease had grown into a howl, echoing the silent screams that began to build within me. Action Beat 7. confrontation and confusion, determined to break the cycle, to push against the invisible barriers that seemed to contain me. I sought out the unsettling employee, the origin of my unease. When I found him, he was as before, immersed in his task with an eerie focus. My approach, swift and determined, forced him to acknowledge me. I demanded answers, my voice a blend of fear and frustration. But what I received in return was a jumble of syllables, a language that was not language, resonating with confusion and disconnection. His eyes, when they met mine, held a depth of bewilderment that mirrored my own. It was clear he was not the architect of this nightmare, but perhaps another victim, lost in the maze of shifting realities. Action beat 8, the escape. The interaction, baffling as it was, sparked a realization, a need to trust my senses, to look beyond what was perceived. With renewed resolve, I navigated the aisles, no longer seeking familiarity, but instead focusing on the discrepancies, the subtle cues that hinted at the store's true layout. And finally, as if the store itself had relented, the front emerged, the nighttime sky visible through the automatic doors. I hurried forward, propelled by a mixture of relief and fear, pushing into the night, the cool air washing over me like a cleansing wave. Action beat 9, the world outside. Standing outside, the night enveloping me, the Walmart looming behind felt both menacing and ordinary. I turned to look at it, half expecting it to morph before my eyes, but it remained steadfastly a store, silent, innocuous. The journey from the doors to my car felt like traversing a chasm between worlds. As I drove away, the experience clung to me, a shroud of questions and shadows that whispered doubts about reality, perception, and the thin veil between them. The ending. Reflections and questions. Safe within the confines of my home, the adrenaline of fear subsided, leaving in its wake a deep, pervasive unease. My mind replayed the events, seeking logic in the illogical. Was it a trick of the mind, a stress-induced mirage, or had the Walmart shifted, revealing a facet of reality I'd never known? The question of what truly transpired lingered, a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit. The potential answers, each more unsettling than the last, hovered at the edge of my consciousness. A reminder of the night a simple shopping trip veered into the realms of psychological terror. This experience, etched into my memory, served as a chilling testament to the fragility of perception, leaving me forever changed, forever questioning the nature of the world around me.